Today I'm going to take you behind the scenes as I create a classic fashion shoot, and we're going to be only using one light. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here. As you look at my work, you can see that I use a lot of different lighting setups. Sometimes I'm using 5 lights, sometimes I'm using gels. But depending on the concept, sometimes you only need a single light. Instead of leading with the setup, I always base my shoots on the concept and then figure out what lighting is going to reinforce that concept, flatter the subject, or create the mood that I'm trying to achieve. And so today, the right lighting setup is actually a single strobe. Over to the left-hand side, you can see that I have a large white umbrella with diffusion, and this is one of my go-to modifiers when I'm trying to achieve soft light. Now, many photographers will use 5-foot or even 7-foot octoboxes, but these can be a pain to set up and tear down, whereas an umbrella, they're so easy to use. You can pop it up, be ready in a couple of seconds. But there's something else that I really like about this particular umbrella. This is the Profoto deep white umbrella. And so the depth is actually going to be really useful to control the spread of light. So for example, I'm shooting on a white background, and if I want that background to go a little bit darker, maybe be gray, I can actually feather the light, change the angle so it's pointed across the scene away from the background. And by having a deeper umbrella, it actually narrows that spread of light and makes it easier to control and to feather. Now, in this case, I actually have it pointed slightly more towards the background because I want a little bit more of a high key shot. Now, speaking of high key, the background that you see here is a Savage Universal Super White. And in my concept, I want something that feels like a timeless vintage black and white fashion image. Something that I could have seen throughout the 60s or 70s, maybe in the vibe of what was very popular in Harper's Bazaar, maybe an Irving Penn or Richard Avedon in feel. So we have the basic ingredients. I have the soft light source feathered towards the white background, so it gives me a higher key look. Let me show you what I'm working with so far. I don't think the shot looks like a lot yet, but I know my intention is to convert this to a high contrast black and white, which is one of the reasons that I always shoot tethered. Today I'm shooting tethered using a Tether Tools tether cable and a tether block on my camera. Now, as I'm shooting, the images come into the computer. What I like to do is in Capture One or whatever raw processor you're using, I like to come in and actually start to process my file, because then as I shoot, the changes that I make will come into every image. And so I can kind of get an idea of what I'm achieving with my light. And so I can see if I need to make any adjustments. So here I have switched the image over to black and white, but it still, to me, looks a little bit flat, doesn't have as much pop. So I'm going to go back up to my basic adjustments and pop my contrast. And so you can see this is giving me a lot more of that vintage feel. Now, when I pop contrast, highlights get brighter and shadows get darker, and sometimes with an image like this, you can start to lose some detail in the highlights of the skin when you pop contrast. So if I am a little bit too overexposed, I can always go into my high dynamic range and bring the highlights back in a little bit. Now, for the way that I shoot, I will also often add a little clarity just to emphasize detail. Now, I like this so far. Let me show you the before and the after. I do like it, but I think I want a little bit darker shadows on the shadow side of her face. This is a little bit more reminiscent of those high contrast vintage black and white shots. So I do need to add one more ingredient, but it's not another light. Instead, it's the opposite. It's going to absorb light. I need to add some negative fill. And so to the right-hand side, I am going to add a black V-flat. When I add a black V-flat, what it's going to do is it's going to prevent the light from bouncing off the white walls in my space. Right now, I have a big soft light source that is spreading out, it's hitting everything, and it's bouncing off my ceilings, my walls, my floors, everywhere, and it's acting as a big bounce reflector. Well, I don't want that. I actually want to absorb the light, which is what the V-flat is going to do. Now, if you don't have a V-flat, there are other options. Basically, any dark surface will work, but a V-flat is going to allow me to absorb head to toe. So let me bring that into the shot. Let's see what the difference is using negative fill. All right, so when you look at these shots, what you can see is now that the negative fill's been added, the shadows on both her arm and the side of her face are much darker. They're much richer. Now, she's wearing a black dress, but let's say you wanted to do a shoot where she's wearing a silver dress or maybe something that's white. If you're shooting white on a white background, it'll often blend in. There won't be enough contrast and separation between the two. So adding a black V-flat would be extremely helpful for a setup like this. And so in this example, you don't see it on the dress, but you definitely see it on the arm and her jawline. This setup is really simple. It's not meant to be complex, but sometimes when your lighting becomes too complex, it becomes the subject matter of the image. You're paying more attention to the lighting than the subject. So here, what I'm looking for is something that feels quiet, timeless, maybe adding a little bit of movement, a little bit of glamour in the way that her hair blows. That's actually what I want to emphasize in this frame. So one light with negative fill is going to be the perfect solution. Now, speaking of shooting with one light and getting more creative, I actually have a class called One Light Artistry. This is a video as well as a lighting recipe guide. And I have many setups that I show how you can use a single light, whether it's a soft light, a hard light, something in between, bounce light, in order to sculpt that light for so many different results. You can have images that are dramatic, sculpted, sculptural, high contrast black and white, or ones that are soft, beautiful for portraits. So if you want to learn to better master one light, you should definitely check that out. All right, so I've got the core ingredients that I need here, and now I'm going to direct my subject, get a little movement and life to these shots. Let's talk just a little bit more about the gear that I'm using for this shoot. For my strobe, I am using a Profoto Pro D3. For my camera and lens, I'm using my favorite combo, the Canon R5 and the Canon RF 24-105 2.8. This is going to be perfect because I can shoot full-length shots, pop into a beauty shot all with one lens, so I can get them very quickly without slowing down and having to switch out to different focal lengths. All right, let's get the shot. Okay, so there you have it. Sometimes less is more. It's more about what you put in front of your camera, how you interact with the subject, the movement that you capture, rather than overpowering the image with lighting. And then sometimes more is more as well. All right, guys, so if you want to see the gear used to make these images, be sure to check out the links in the description below. And of course, visit Adorama.com. And if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe because there's so many more videos just like this one coming your way. See you next time, guys.